Well, this is a subject that has some emotion attached to it. And again, your author does not consider anything with respect to gender other than binary gender. And that may be a product of the book's age and maybe your author's age. But although the book is not that old, it's 6 years old, things have changed a lot, I think, in 6 years in society with respect to sensibilities about gender. Are there major differences between male and female performance on tasks? And what your author would say is that things are usually fairly closely overlapping. And that would be more often the graph on the left than the one on the right. In fact, here's another rendering from the actual text of 4 things. Now, in real life, would there ever be any kind of task like as depicted in graph A in which there's no overlap between males and females? Probably not. On many things, it looks like B, where the distributions of performance overlap completely, essentially. Although we do find some subtle differences on things like verbal ability that may favor females. And maybe in some rare cases, especially at an early age, it would favor females a lot. And I think reading ability tends to favor females, especially up until 5th or 6th grade, pretty strongly. Females are far ahead of males as a rule. So a couple of blurbs. Now, this is, I think, a fair depiction of this. Speculation about differences between females and males is a national is a national preoccupation. I guess it kind of is. In our culture, people care whether there are fundamental differences between girls and boys, and we place more emphasis on the possibility of these differences than on other kinds of distinctions that could be made. For example, we rarely wonder whether blue-eyed and brown-eyed or short and tall children differ, but for some reason we're tied up with gender like nobody's bizwax, and I think there's more than a germ of truth to that. I think that it's a preoccupation on some level, especially among the kids themselves, but maybe in other aspects of if there's an advantage for one major gender over the other on some task that may be predictive of things. Now, when we're publishing articles on gender differences in cognition, there's what is called a file drawer problem. And this is part of the academic industry, if you will, that studies that show differences are likely to be published. Other less colorful studies that don't show differences are less likely to be published. And therefore, you have a skewed idea of what the true state of affairs is if the literature is flooded with suggested differences. Another one is among the experimenters, the researchers, there's expectancy for the project to yield a difference by gender and maintaining their blindness. In other words, when a researcher is blind, they don't know what to expect. They don't know the point of the study. If I were using GAs or graduate research assistants to conduct research, I would try to maintain their blindness so they can't influence the study subtly according to expectations. It's very difficult to maintain that blindness, so it's hard to instill that, as I say. But it's, as your author says, I can't help but laugh, but it's amazing what a preoccupation it is. It's for whatever reason, gender's fascinating. And I know of recent years, and maybe the last 8 years or so, we've become more vocal about the idea of gender fluidity, but your author doesn't acknowledge that at all. So, or maybe just fleetingly.